Hey, my name's Lena. I inherited my granddad's cabin after he passed, or so I thought. While I was mourning, my parents sold it behind my back. They forged my signature, moved in my cousin, and called me too fragile to handle real responsibility. But Granddad knew them better than I did. He hid something in the walls they didn't notice, and when they realized what they'd missed, it was too late. Before we start, what time are you reading this? And where from? Drop a comment below. This might hit close to home. I pulled up. Slowly, gravel crunching under my tires as the late afternoon sun lit the porch just like it always had. Granddad's porch. I sat there a moment, engine off, listening to crickets hum through the Georgia spring air. For a second, it felt like he might step out, wave like always, say, "There's my star." But he wouldn't. He was gone. And all I had was this cabin, or so I thought. When I stepped out and approached the mailbox, something caught my eye. The brass nameplate that once read Harrow was gone, replaced. A new engraving shone in the sunlight. Celine Carver. My heart skipped. Celine, my cousin who'd fake migraines to dodge helping Granddad in the garden. That's Celine. I opened the mailbox, half expecting a letter for me, something from the attorney's office confirming Granddad's promise. The cabin was mine. Nothing. Just a pet store coupon and a realtor flyer with Celine's photo, grinning too wide. I carried my bag to the front door, reaching for the spare key under the clay turtle. Still there. Some things hadn't changed. Inside, the smell hit first. Jasmine, citrus oil, and something clinical, like hospital cleaner. I blinked as I entered. The living room. Boxes, neatly labeled, stacked 3 high along the walls. Living room decor. Cedar books. Granddad Harrow Donate. I turned slowly. The old mantel clock still ticked, but the room's warmth was gone, a hollow shell. My eyes landed on a box marked Lena's childhood room. Sort later. The handwriting was careless, like my memories were an afterthought. I walked down the hall, past the coat rack where Granddad hung my scarf every time I forgot it. My bedroom door was open, emptied. The closet held 2 boxes, both labeled Misc, Dispose, or Donate. My heart sank deeper than I thought possible. No one had called, no one had asked. I sat on the edge of the bare bed. The mattress's familiar dip was gone, replaced. My palms pressed into my thighs as I breathed through the ache in my throat. Grief came in waves, but this was destruction. I stood, steadied myself on the bureau, and moved toward the hallway. That's when I heard her voice. "Oh, Lena, you're here early." I turned. My mother stood there, perfectly polished as always, lipstick fresh, heels clicking on oak, like she hadn't buried her father last week. "Early for what?" I asked quietly. She smiled, like breaking bad news with charm. "Celine's been staying here to help with the transition. We're prepping to list." "List what?" "The cabin, sweetheart. You know how old it is. Upkeep would bury you." She passed me, straightening a tilted frame on the wall like nothing was wrong. I thought. My voice faded. Granddad said he told me this cabin would be mine. Well, plans change. Your granddad wasn't exactly known for handling paperwork. I didn't respond. I walked past her toward the study. My boots felt too loud, like I was trespassing in someone else's home. Maybe I was. On the console table near the study door, a photo lay face down. I hesitated, picked it up. It was us. Me, Granddad, and Rusty, our old collie, taken the summer after I finished college. Granddad's hand rested on my shoulder, his smile creasing his eyes like when he said, "This cabin's got strong roots, just like you." I turned the frame over slowly, set it upright. No words, no tears. just breath. The study was dimmer than I remembered. Curtains swapped for Selena's taste. Something modern, grayish. I moved to Granddad's desk, still faintly scented with pine and ink. I opened drawers one by one, careful not to disturb anything. Nothing unusual until the last drawer on the right. Locked. I stared, tracing its edges with my fingers. Beneath the lock, faint enough to miss unless you knew to look, were carved letters LH, my initials, no one else's. You promised, I whispered, palm flat on the wood. You said this would be mine. The light outside had faded to a soft amber. I didn't move, hand still on the drawer, trying to recall Granddad's last words and wondering who else had the key. I didn't realize how long I'd stood there until the front door creaked again. Voices drifted in, heels clicking, paper bags rustling, someone laughing softly. I slipped an envelope into my pocket and stepped into the hallway, steadying myself. The living room, silent an hour ago, now buzzed. Celine, in some high-end athleisure, perched on the couch arm like it was her stage. My father, Roland, leaned against the mantel, arms crossed, that familiar tired kindness on his face. Always the peacemaker in tense moments. My mother, Clara, glided through like a gala hostess. We were wondering where you went, she said, smiling too wide. I told them you were probably just reminiscing. I didn't answer. My eyes flicked to the coffee table, where a thick folder now sat. Everyone's here, Celine chirped, like this was a book club, not my granddad's cabin being stripped of memory. Roland cleared his throat, pocketing his phone. We wanted to loop you in properly, Lena. I know this has moved fast, but it's for the best. For the best? I repeated slowly. Exactly. Clara nodded, hands clasped like leading a sermon. The cabin went into escrow last Friday. Solid offer, above market, closing in about 10 days. My knees wobbled, but I didn't sit. You sold it. It was too much for you, sweetheart, Roland said, like explaining bills to a kid. The maintenance, the taxes? You're a librarian. How would you manage? Celine laughed. You should thank us. No stress, no mortgage, no leaky roof. You dodged a bullet, cousin. The air shifted. They weren't sparing me. They weren't careless. This was calculated. Clara handed me the folder. This is just acknowledgement paperwork. The buyer's coming tomorrow for a final walkthrough. I opened it slowly. Escrow, details, closing date, signatures. My name wasn't there. I didn't sign anything, I said. I didn't know there was a sale. You didn't need to, Roland said gently. The property was in the family trust. That gives us control. Granddad told me he left the cabin to me, in my name. Clara gave me that familiar look. Pity mixed with impatience. Verbal promises don't hold up in probate, dear. I swallowed hard, still standing, the folder heavy in my hands. And none of you thought to mention this before you packed up my childhood and slapped someone else's name on the mailbox? Silence. Celine twirled her necklace. We didn't think you'd take it so personally. It's just a cabin. No, I said quietly. It was a promise. No one answered. Roland shifted. Clara sat. Celine smirked at her phone. I left. The room. The late afternoon sun sank lower. I pushed open the back patio door, stepping into warm air. Granddad had planted lavender along the fence years ago. It still bloomed, wild and soft. I stood there, letting the heat sink into my skin, wondering how many decisions about my life were made while I was still crying at the funeral. Inside, laughter broke out. Someone mentioned dinner plans. It didn't fit. None of it did. Later, after they'd left, Celine with a see you tomorrow like we were colleagues, I sank into a kitchen chair and checked my phone. I shouldn't have. A post from Celine. A curated shot of Granddad's porch, captioned, "Some care more about property than peace. Granddad deserved better than drama." Comments. "Let the dead rest. Can't believe Lena's fighting over a cabin. Disgusting. There's always one." My thumb hovered, numb. They were rewriting the story, painting me greedy, selfish, ungrateful. And it was working. I stood, moving without thinking, back to the study. The screwdriver was still in the junk drawer. I pried open the locked drawer, wood splintering, something in me with it. Inside, a single envelope. My name in Granddad's hand. I held it, unopened. My voice cracked. What have they done? Back at my apartment, I shut the door with a quiet thud, leaning against it, still gripping the envelope. My purse slid, off my shoulder, hitting the floor softly. The silence was heavy. No voices, no clinking glasses, just me and the envelope. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my name in Granddad's steady, slanted script. I opened it. Inside, two things. A folded copy of his original will and a yellowed note. My heart raced, his handwriting again. If they sold the cabin, check the signature. Check the date. You weren't in town. I read it 3 times, hands trembling, then dug into Clara's folder. The sale agreement, my signature, perfectly forged, down to the slight curve in the L and the tail on the A. I hadn't signed anything, not for the cabin, not for a sale. My mind raced. I grabbed my laptop, opened my inbox, searched Portland, the librarian conference, flight confirmation, departure, May 11th, return May 16th. My calendar, 4 days. Of workshops, keynotes, hotel bookings, networking breakfasts. A photo of me on a panel, emailed by a colleague. The sale document was dated May 13th. I wasn't even in the state. I exhaled, bitter, then pulled an old plastic file folder from my desk drawer. In thick black marker, I wrote, "Truth across, the front." I dropped in the will, the flight confirmation, the forged sale page. I sat back, staring at the folder. They hadn't just taken the cabin. They'd erased me from the story, signed my name like I was already gone. At midnight, I called Sarah, a fellow librarian who'd organized the Portland panel. She answered, groggy. "Lena, you okay?" "Sorry. To call late," I said quickly. "Can you send a letter confirming I was there May 11th through 16th, specifically speaking at the symposium on the 13th? Her voice brightened. "Yeah, definitely. You were amazing that day." "Thanks," I said, voice tighter than I meant. "I really appreciate it." After hanging up, I plugged in my phone, splashed cold water on my face, then remembered the old family tablet. Clara had once synced all her devices when I helped recover a password. Her texts and cloud photos backed up across them. I hadn't thought about it until now. I grabbed the tablet from the hallway shelf. It powered on. I opened the Messages app, scrolled, and found it. A screenshot Roland sent to someone named Victor, matching the buyer's documents. "We've got her okay. Don't worry. She won't contest. She's quiet." My chest tightened. Another from Clara, to Roland. "She's always been the quiet one. That's why she's perfect. Perfect to disappear. Perfect to ignore. Perfect to walk over." My jaw clenched. I screenshotted both texts, emailed them to myself, saved them to a USB drive in my drawer. Labeled truth. I held it tightly. They didn't just lie. They counted on me staying silent, soft, nodding politely, blending into the background, thanking them for it. But they forgot something. I stood, looked around my quiet apartment. Not weak, just quiet. I slipped Granddad's will into my bag, grabbed my keys. You picked the wrong quiet one. I didn't sleep. I sat in my car, USB in my pocket. Granddad's will on the passenger seat like a silent witness. The sun was just rising when I drove downtown. By the time I parked outside Nora Bennett's office, the city was awake. People with coffee cups, laptops, oblivious to my world shifting. Her firm was in a modest brick building, a brass plaque by the door. Bennett and Lyle, Estate and Family Law. I walked in, documents in hand, no appointment, but urgent. Minutes later, Nora stepped into the lobby, mid-40s, composed, with a calm you couldn't fake. Her auburn hair was pinned up, her navy suit sharp. "You're Lena?" she asked, extending a hand. "Let's talk." Her office smelled of cedar and old paper. I sat across from her, opened my folder labeled Truth, and slid everything across. The will, the forged sale, flight confirmation, text screenshots. She read silently, holding the will, eyes narrowing. Then she smiled slowly. "Your granddad," she said, tapping a line. "Was very careful." She turned the document to me, pointing. "There's a clause overriding the trust. The cabin may not be sold under any trust delegation or power of attorney unless Lena Harrow signs in person with 2 witnesses." I blinked. "So they can't sell it?" "Not legally. And forging your signature? That's fraud. Criminal." Something clicked inside me, like a foundation settling. Nora straightened. "We'll file an emergency injunction to halt the transaction. I'll send a letter to the buyer today." My voice was low. "He doesn't know?" "If he does, he'll answer to the state bar. If not, he'll want to know he's buying stolen property." I exhaled a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Do I have to go to court?" "Eventually, yes. But today, we buy time and shake the table." Nora stood, printing documents with calm precision. For the first time, I believed I could win. That evening, I drove by Granddad's cabin. No one was there. Porch light off, blinds drawn. I sat in my car, then stepped out, gravel crunching. I unlocked the door with the turtle key. Inside, it smelled of dust and old lemon cleaner, like childhood and endings. I walked to the hallway. The framed photo of Granddad, me, and Rusty still sat there, but the back felt thicker. I found a screwdriver in the kitchen junk drawer, unscrewed the frame's backing. Taped inside, a small brass key, warm in my palm, like it had been waiting. Scanned the room. The fireplace stood quietly. I stepped closer. One floorboard near the hearth had a tiny star etched into the grain, something no one else would notice. I knelt, key in hand. The board lifted with a soft creak, my breath catching like I was disturbing a patient's secret. The star wasn't just decoration. It was a guide. Inside, a fireproof lockbox, no bigger than a shoebox, corners worn smooth. I pulled it out, sat against the wall, morning light slipping through the curtains. My fingers traced the brass clasp. The key turned with a click that echoed too loudly. Inside, tucked between flannel layers, a USB drive, a letter in Granddad's bold script, and an envelope labeled Milo. My eyes flicked to the letter. "If they try to erase you, go to Milo." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, maybe both. Granddad always said Milo Granger remembered things the neighborhood forgot. Birthdays, gate codes, the year the oak out back stopped blooming. I slipped the drive and letter into my purse, held the Milo envelope a moment, then tucked it in too. By 9 a.m., I was on Milo's porch, 2 blocks away, hesitating before knocking. The house looked smaller, paint peeling, but the spoon wind chime still jingled like old laughter. The door opened before I knocked. "Lena Harrow," Milo said, voice cracking. "Wondered when you'd come." He looked frailer, shoulders hunched. but his eyes were sharp. He gestured me inside with warmth I hadn't felt in days. "I've got something for you," he said, shuffling to the kitchen table. He placed a flash drive beside a cassette tape and an old photo. Me, Granddad, rusty under the oak. Me about 7, missing a tooth. Beaming. On the back, in Granddad's script, "She remembers what matters." I sat, slowly, overwhelmed. "Why'd he give you this?" Milo rested his palm over the cassette. "He didn't trust them. Said you'd fight for what the cabin meant, not its worth." He opened a cassette to digital converter and hit play. Granddad's voice filled the room. "They'll tear it apart, Milo, piece by piece, if I don't lock it down." Milo's voice, muffled. "You wrote the will. It's not about paperwork, it's about intention. Lena understands that. She always did." I stared at my hands. "She won't fight for herself," Granddad's voice continued. "But she'll fight for the meaning. That's why she's the keeper of the light." A knot rose in my throat. I pressed my fingers to my lips to keep from sobbing. My silence all these years, every time I let things slide, walked away, hadn't been weakness to him. He saw me. Steady, anchored. "Why didn't he tell me?" I whispered. Milo smiled gently. "He did. You just needed to hear it now." I stayed longer, sipping tea, talking about Granddad's laugh, his terrible waffles, the summer we nearly burned down the shed building a birdhouse. My chest felt less like a cage, more like a lantern with a flame still burning. On my way out, Milo pressed the photo into my hand. "Take it. Your fight's not over, but you've got more fire now." That evening, I spread everything on my kitchen table. The will, flight documents, forged sale, texts, recording. I pulled out Nora's affidavit. I thought of the photo, the oak, how Granddad's voice said my name like it carried weight. I signed, not for revenge, not just for the cabin, but because something sacred was entrusted to me. If I let them bury it under paperwork and power plays, I'd lose more than a home. I'd lose what made it one. I barely slept. The night hummed, electric, like a storm brewing. By dawn, I was dressed, caffeinated, ready, if not to win, to stand my ground. Nora arranged a 9:30 meeting at Sterling Realty. I arrived early, but she was already there, calm authority by the glass doors. I'd never valued stillness until Nora. She folded intensity into grace. "Let's begin," she said, holding the door. Inside, the air smelled of fake jasmine and polish, hiding something rotten. A junior agent blinked. "Appointment?" "She has one now," Nora replied, slipping a thick envelope from her bag. "Cease and desist. Get Mr. Victor Ramsey and your managing broker." The agent hesitated, then scurried off at Nora's look. Minutes later, Victor Ramsey appeared. Late 40s, sharp haircut, confidence cracking when he saw Nora's legal packet. "Nora Bennett," he said. "You're representing Lena Harrow? The rightful heir to the property your firm tried to buy with fraudulent authorization." He raised an eyebrow. "Her mother was the family's contact. We were told—" "You were told lies," Nora cut in evenly, tapping the affidavit. "This is a sworn statement with evidence proving my client wasn't in the state during the alleged signature." She held up the sale agreement. "This contains a forged signature." Victor looked at me, his tone patronizing, slightly guilty. "Your mother said you were emotional. I should have known better than to trust her word." I said nothing. Silence. Let shame echo louder. He rubbed his neck. "I'm withdrawing my offer immediately and speaking with legal about damages to my firm's reputation." Nora nodded. "I suggest you do. And notify your title company. They nearly bought stolen property." Word spread fast. By the time we stepped outside, Selini's name was on the agent's outgoing text. Gossip moves quick when liability's in the air. Nora offered a small, satisfied smile. That was the easy part. I returned to Granddad's cabin that afternoon. Clara's car was parked crooked, Celine's SUV hatch open, boxes stacked inside. Clara, in pearlescent gloves, held one of Granddad's pipe boxes like an auction piece. "We're just documenting what needs relocating," she said, not looking up. "You mean stealing?" I snapped. Celine laughed breathily. "Rich, coming from you. Suddenly you care about these old relics." I stepped closer. "They're not relics. They're stories. And you're not touching another one." "Lena," Clara sighed, lowering the box. "You've made your point. Your granddad belonged to all of us. You're making this divisive." I narrowed my eyes. "No, Mom. You did that when you forged my name and called it convenient." Her jaw tensed. I turned and saw it. One of Granddad's paintings, a Smoky Mountains landscape we'd hiked when I was 15, leaning against the wall. The colors were wrong. Too bright. Too new. I knelt. Selena scoffed. "Don't play curator." I ran my finger along the canvas edge. "Not linen. Synthetic." I called Nora. "I need a favor. Bring an art expert." Within the hour, Nora arrived with Ms. Tate, a retired gallery curator. Tate examined the painting silently, then spoke. "This is a reproduction. A good one, but not original." Clara's tone sharpened. "Impossible. That painting's been in the family for years." Nora raised an eyebrow. "And yet, here we are." I felt something shift. This wasn't just about the cabin. They were laundering its contents, swapping originals, gutting memories, turning Granddad's life into cash and calling it closure. I moved to the attic hatch. I hadn't been up there since high school, but instinct said if they'd hidden one thing, there was more. I pulled the rope ladder, dust swirling, heart pounding. The attic was dim, but behind the chimney wall, something glinted, metallic, square. I crawled over beams, reaching a small steel safe behind a loose panel. No keyhole, just a keypad. I stared, dust on my palms. Birthdays, Granddad's mine, invalid. Then I remembered, helping him set up an email years ago. "Let's keep it simple," he'd chuckled. "Rusty's adoption date." I typed 0523. Click. The latch gave. Inside, a bundle of aged documents and a flash drive in wax paper. I lifted ownership certificates, stamped with appraisals, not just heirlooms, but historically significant pieces from Granddad's walls, backed by insurance valuations. My stomach churned. They'd planned to swap them for fakes and pocket the money. At the bottom, Granddad's note. "If they get desperate, they'll trade history for cash. Don't let them." These were collected with meaning, not money. You're the only one who saw that. I sat in the attic, knees tucked, holding the note like a lifeline. My phone buzzed. Nora. "Your mother's alleging mental instability, falsified documents, undue influence," she said calmly. "She's requesting a freeze on proceedings. Don't panic. We expected this." I exhaled. Let her throw the book. I've got the truth. I sealed the safe, keeping the originals for Nora. That afternoon, I sat by the oak, still leaning like it was, listening. Celine found me, barefoot in her designer outfit like this was a photo shoot. "You never fought for anything," she said, arms crossed. "Why now?" "Because Granddad fought for me, even when I didn't think I deserved it," she snorted. "You're not special, just first in line." I turned to her. "I'm the only one who read the fine print." Her mouth twitched. She hesitated. "You think this ends with the cabin? It doesn't." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm still here." Evening came. I was sorting legal folders in the dining room when I heard an engine. A moving van idled at the curb. Clara stepped out of an SUV with two men in dark suits, briefcases in hand. They weren't here to talk. My breath caught as I backed from the window, voice low. They're making their final move. I didn't run. I walked to the dining room, picked up my phone, tapped record and set it face down, microphone angled. The front door burst open without a knock. Clara entered, heels sharp, flanked by 2 estate lawyers looking straight out of a legal drama. She didn't glance at me, tossing a folder on the dining table like a challenge. "This cabin was never just about you," she said coldly. I didn't flinch. I opened my folder, laying out each appraisal, certificate, authenticated document, from the safe. "No," I said. "It was about the $2 million you were laundering through Granddad's art." One lawyer shifted. The other froze mid-page. Before Clara could retort, the door opened again, by invitation. Victor Ramsey entered, less smug than before. Nora close behind, her briefcase a quiet force. She nodded at me and sat. Victor scanned the room. I wasn't told this would be a group session. Nora smiled faintly. "We thought you should hear all sides." I walked to the console, inserted the USB into the old laptop. The screen flickered, then Granddad's face appeared, tired but clear. "If you're watching this," his voice rasped. "They did what I feared, but I left the truth in the walls for Lena, because she listened." The room stilled. Even the lawyers didn't move. Victor sat back. "Your mother said you were unstable, that you hated this place." I turned to him, voice steady. "She said that because I never told her what she wanted to hear. I didn't want to sell. I didn't want to pretend Granddad meant nothing. That's the difference." Clara stood abruptly. "Oh, please. Are we giving weight to a sentimental recording?" He was old. He said things like that all the time. Nora raised a brow, opening her folder. "We also have video of the forged signatures, insurance reports, emails coordinating the art swap." Clara smirked, tapping her tablet. "How about a video of Lena saying she wanted to walk away from this cabin?" She turned the screen to Victor, playing a clip from a family picnic years ago. There I was, in a green sundress, holding a soda, laughing. "I wish I could just walk away from this cabin." Clara paused it. Case closed. Nora didn't blink. "Play it in full." Victor handed her the tablet. Nora scrolled, played the rest. My voice shifted. But I promised him I wouldn't. Not after everything he built here. Silence. I stepped forward. They thought I'd stay silent. Silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. I handed Victor the case file. Timelines, appraisals, Granddad's video, emails, everything. He turned to Clara, eyes sharp. "You didn't tell me this. I won't be part of it anymore. You've crossed every line." Clara's face twisted. "We gave you life," she hissed. I stared, voice calm. "And you tried to sell it back to me." Blue and red lights flashed through the windows. The room froze. Nora stood, gathering her bag, and looked at Clara. "They're not here for me," she said softly. Nora's words lingered as officers stepped forward, their commands cutting through Clara's frantic denials. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. That moment belonged to truth. And I'd said enough. 3 weeks later, the shock has settled. But the ache lingers. The cabin is quiet now. The kind of quiet you only feel after chaos clears. The front door creaks the same. The air smells of pine and old paper. I can walk room to room without bracing for a fight. Clara and Roland were charged. Fraud, forgery, conspiracy. Cold legal terms. But the impact was real. Celine took a deal, left town without packing. I didn't stop her. Victor testified on my behalf, admitting I believed the wrong people. He walked away from the sale. I respected that. The cabin is legally mine now, but I never wanted to just keep it. I walked the hallway that morning, pausing at each room, not to mourn or celebrate, but to plan. The boxes weren't for leaving. They were for reimagining. One room will be a book club for seniors needing company, another an art space for kids whose families can't afford camps. In the backyard, I'll restore Granddad's shed into a community workshop, not a museum, but a space to keep the light alive, like he wanted. Milo came by today, slower but eyes bright when he saw the photo in the hallway. Me, Granddad, Rusty, under the oak, all beaming like fools. He placed a plaque below it. She remembers what matters. I couldn't speak, just nodded. He squeezed my hand, like he knew. That afternoon, I returned to Granddad's study, untouched, books in uneven stacks, a pipe on the windowsill. The smell of ink and cedar lingered. I opened the last unchecked drawer. Inside, wrapped in a faded cloth, was a leather notebook. The final entry, dated 3 days before he passed. Redemption is heavier than revenge, and more lasting. You remembered. Lena, you kept the cabin alive. I closed the book, held it to my chest. Outside, golden light filtered through the branches. The cabin groaned softly in its roots, the sounds I grew up with on cold nights or rainy days. I sank into the old couch by the window, where Granddad napped with Rusty at his feet. My body let go of months, maybe years, of tension. They tried to erase me from the story, but the cabin remembered.